Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to tonight's episode of Talking Point. I'm your host as usual, Syed Niaz Ahmed. In our studios today, we have two very distinguished ladies. On my left is Chandra Bhatia. She is a legend, a campaigner for anti-racism and has run the REC, the Racial Equality Council in Enfield. She has contributed and suggested some measures that have been adopted as part of the national policy. On my right is a lady at large, Yasmin Brett. She was for a long time with the Enfield Council, mayor, leader, and whatnot. Now she is with the Racial Equality Council. Welcome to the show, both ladies. Thank you very much for making time for us. I know it was a rush thing, but that's how life is.
Thank you very much for inviting us. It's a great honor and privilege to be with you all and all the communities who are listening to this program.
We have had the pleasure of having you once during COVID time virtually, but now it's a greater pleasure welcoming you to the studios. About yourself, probably I was not, my introduction was not detailed enough.
Okay, I'm Chandra Bhatia. I work for the Enfield Racial Equality Council, and I have been with them for some years. Before that, I was in Redbridge, and I've actually been, campaigning, if you like the word that, or actually just working to get people to work together to be, to be sort of a fair and just in society to everybody in the community. So the Racial Equality Council doesn't just work for one community, it works for all the community. And we are there for everybody. And sometimes, we actually have people saying, you're just there for black people, but it's not true. It's true, we're there for all the community, and we will help anybody who needs help.
Right. When you talk about racial equality and anti-racism and things like that, you see, for my education and for a lot of other people, what is race?
That's an interesting question. What is race? I'm not sure I can answer that. It's a huge question. I think what we're really talking about is how people define themselves, really. And a lot of the time people define themselves, I didn't even know the word race until I came to this country. I didn't know about, different
race meant only racing for the bus.
Yeah, exactly. It's something that we learn here, that how we divide ourselves into different categories and things, and and we're all sort of like human, and we're all part of the human race, I think. And I think that's important to realize that at first.
That takes me back to something else. See, when God created Adam and Eve, we understand that was the beginning of human race, not a species. But later, as we understand, that it was also used that the word was used, tribes, see? Then the Lord is my shepherd. And we get different words for the same meaning, like race, like human beings, like a species. But isn't race is a social construct, see, for our understanding. We have introduced meanings to this word.
I believe you're right, Niaz, if I may call you that.
Just call me Niaz.
Niaz, yes, a social construct.
Yeah.
If we look at it from the historical perspective, I cannot claim to be an expert in this area, but I have worked and spoken about and again been involved through the authority in policy around this area, but I can't claim to be an expert. But what I do understand about it is that the term race as is being used now relies on a social construct, I think created around the 1800s, which was used particularly in relation to grouping different people according to their if you like, appearance, and some say it was used, to create a kind of hierarchy of different people, and based on that, colonization and some other activities, if one wants to call it that way,
exploitation.
It was much easier to do this. Now, to say, I know that it is normally associated with the white community from the point of view of colonization in literature, but of course colonization took place amongst many different communities, to many different people, historically over the period. But it does seem to have this color element in it, unfortunately.
Think of whites over whites. I mean, people, the native people of America were whites. More white than the white. They were red.
They were red.
I don't know.
I don't know. I can't say who was what, but it's certainly something that is based on a kind of, it's something we cannot change. We are born with.
Right.
So to that extent, it has an irrational element to it, and I'm very glad that there has been a reappraisal of this subject, don't you think, as well, Chandra, that hopefully we can move away from the politics of color, because it's something none of us can change, and none of us may want to change.
Right. See, the politics of color. There is also the commercialism of color, isn't it? See, commercialism. See, I'm talking about the cosmetics, the creams, the get well, get a better tan, get a better look.
It is interesting, because there was a time in this country where the ladies carried parasols around in order not to get darker, because they didn't want to be associated with people working in the field, for instance, and they wanted for that reason.
Yes.
But now, of course, people want to get tanned. So it's all about fashion, isn't it? So in some extent, but I mean that is the lighter side of it, if you like. But there's always a serious side that Yasmin was talking about, how your color and your other aspects about yourself can be used against you to discriminate.
Just tanning is also a part of commercialism, isn't it? The people want to sell something, and you create a demand for that, and then people will fall for that, and then people buy. See, even the whitening cream and the tanning creams sold abundantly in some of those countries where ethnically people are not that fair.
Oh yes, absolutely. They are indeed. I mean, we know from, for example, the Asian subcontinent, there can be, some people have an obsession with looking lighter, and that has, as you say, a very serious side, because maybe somebody can't get married because of it. It's very unfortunate, because they are such beautiful people, and you hear about these things.
That again goes back to colonization, doesn't it? About who was considered, and even before that, is like which the caste system, etc., was like based on certain aspects, and the fairer you were, the higher you were in the hierarchy of what was your entitlement. You're privileged, and that is still pursued even now in many places.
Yes, like if you belong to then again we come to something else. It's a different caste. See.
Yeah.
If you belong to a particular caste, and you are assigned a particular job, see, and no matter what, whether you knew how to perform well or not, but it was your duty to do that, and you will get that job. But somebody born in a different society, different family, and he will probably be a cobbler. And he will go on. He can't improve. See, and of course things have changed a lot, and cobblers make a lot of money. And people who make shoes make a lot of money. These are the big
Jimmy
companies.
Choo, my goodness, I wouldn't mind having his money.
For making anything. So it's a bit there is a cobweb of opinions and ideas. It's not clear, but sometimes, as we are all human beings, we let loose our emotions, and emotions get better of our sincerity and feelings, you see. So things get out of hand. And that is what possibly, that's what I think, the job of people involved in Equal Rights Commission, Equal Rights Council, and that's why they have people who have a level-headed mind, and they carry sensible heads on their shoulder, and then they can suggest how to get the best out of any situation.
Well,
Right?
Chandra's certainly been doing that, you know. She can
I think it's about bringing people together to actually discover what are similarities and know the differences, but to celebrate the differences, because majority of the time we all go through as a human being the same
Right.
sort of experiences. You know, you're actually born, you actually then, you know, have to learn certain things to get to a certain age. Then it's like, you know, at a certain age you might have a rite of passage. In some communities, age 13 is considered very important, and you know, you'll be surprised as to how many communities actually, and how many, you know, countries celebrate, you know, that kind of age range, and you know, they have important ceremonies at that time. The Jewish community does, the African community does, the Asian community does, the Hindu community does have, you know, like a certain age by which you actually have, you know, this is considered an adult, and that sort of thing. Yeah, so then you go through other aspects which are about, you know, adulthood, you know, and what you're expected to do as an adult, and what you do as a. Then we all experience the same things: births, marriages, deaths. Every culture has the same sort of things, but surprisingly, I've discovered many of the times some of the rituals and things that go with those ages are very similar. Which, you know, if you think what the Jewish community does at marriage ceremony, what the Hindu community does at the Hindu marriage ceremony, there are so many similarities, you know. And I think that even a wedding in a register office is quite moving. You know, the sort of things that people, the registrars, I was amazed, you know, that it's quite moving to hear the vows that people take, etc. So I think it's in many ways, it's not just about religion and culture, it's also about the law and what the law expects you to be doing at certain ages. You know, and many of the times it's very similar expectations.
But can we, Yasmin, can we come to this agreement that what constitutes a race? What constitutes a race? What is races? I mean, we're talking about racism, we're talking about different races, but what is a race? Is it just, I was born in a particular country, so I belong to that? No. If I were born before the American continent was colonized, I would be considered Red Indian. And why Indian?
Yeah, I think it's an incredibly complex question, and I certainly wouldn't like to say to anybody, you are of this race or you are of that race. I think it is for the person themselves to
identify himself,
to identify his or her or their selves, because it's not something that, it's a sensitive subject for a start, as we have already highlighted. And it's very much, you know, coming from the individual. And for example, in my own personal case, I am mixed race, and I can't say I'm from this particular race. Funnily enough, I did have a DNA test done, just out of interest, you know, because during COVID we had a lot of spare time, and you know, amazing the different communities that came out in my test, and I think that you know, as I say, I suppose human beings have a longing. I mean, this is the one thing we can say from all the research done. Human beings do have a longing to identify with perhaps a tribal identity or a sense of belonging, and I think all of us have that. I mean, I certainly do, but it might not necessarily be via my ethnicity. It might be through another subject. It might be through, I don't know,
likes, fascinations,
Fascination, sorry.
Yes, yeah, fascination.
It might be through the political that I support, or the football team that I support. You know?
The red colour for Arsenal.
Red colour for Arsenal, onion bhajis, you name it. I'm going to find a reason, you know?
Yeah.
But yes, I think it's self-identifying in the first instance. I don't know what you think about that, Chandra, but
Well, I don't really understand, you know, the scientific ways of doing this, but I do know it's about really being, as you said, a sense of belonging to a particular community, to a particular faith, or a particular way how you identify yourself, and a sense of belonging, as you say. I think what is sad is when people start to think one kind of people are not as good as yourself, and if you think that you're all superior to the other people.
Absolutely.
And also in a way that, that is where it goes. Racism is about prejudice, is about people's fear, I think, is about outsiders, or about fear about people who are not the same as them. It's about, you know, that's what xenophobia is about, you know, it's about fear of foreigners, or fear of people who are not the same as you. You know, I mean, I'm sorry to say that, you know, I could go down to the local temple and I may not feel as comfortable with that particular place because other communities are coming in, or may feel comfortable because there are certain type of people there today. Do you know what I'm trying to say? It's about how you feel about others, and whether you're comfortable with them or not, and whether you're open to actually learning about others, whether you're open to, then if you do learn about others, you'll probably find they're very similar to you, you know, in many ways. And okay, if there are differences, you might explore what are the differences. And you know, it may not be scary. I mean, a lot of people are very scared of differences, and I think this is where it goes wrong, where people are actually wanting everybody to be the same as themselves, you know, and because they feel comfortable with that. A lot of people employ people who are just like themselves. You know, that's where the racism comes in when you're employing people, for example. Or you may feel just that you don't want other people in your club because they're different, and you think they're going to behave in a bad way when you don't even know how they're going to be as individuals. So you must stereotype them into certain ways, thinking this particular race is like this particular people are like that, and actually you have no real idea of them.
There's no basis for that.
None, usually. You
I
know?
think Chandra raised a very important point, the categorization and the hierarchy and the way different people, not everybody by any means, in fact in our country here in Britain, the government by and large has made a real, you know, effort to try and, you know, community cohesion, particularly since 2001. They've made a real effort to try and bring communities together, to celebrate diversity. There's been a real effort on that front. But as Chandra very rightly says, you know, this sort of categorization and othering of different people, that is going to come with more exposure to all of us, you know, meeting with each other, to discussing, to understanding the rationale behind what we do. And it might be, you know, that as a consequence of these discussions, we may even change certain ideas in our own cultures about whether it's right or wrong to do something, for example, you know. I mean, some of the areas where prejudice is very prevalent is around subjects concerning cleaning, for example. Right. Cleaning is a big area where, you know, different cultures, from my experience, will say, oh, well, that is clean or that's not clean, you know, and then develop a prejudice around that, for example.
Yep, yeah, you're right. You're right to say we have different standards, you see, and my standard of cleanliness may be different from others, you see, but the problem starts is when I start thinking that just because he's not as clean as I feel I am, he's probably slightly lower in hygiene.
I have to dispute your definition of what is clean anyway in the first place. I think actually a lot of the reasons people sort of like get obsessed with these things is about hygiene and about, you know, like people. I have to say that there are times when people it's used to actually abuse people. You know, people say,
That's
"Oh,
what
you
I'm saying,
smell,"
yes.
or "You do this," or "You do that," and actually it's straight out of
We will have to take a break right
stereotyping.
now, and when we come back,
Yeah.
we'll definitely continue with this very interesting discussion. Thank you for being with us.
Okay.
And we're talking about different races and the interesting topic of cleanliness. Yasmin, you were talking about cleanliness and that it can lead to many good things as well as problems. How do you see that?
Well, as I was saying earlier, I mean, there can be a lot of prejudices, unfortunately, that result from people's different attitudes to cleanliness, and as you said, good things as well. And so these are areas where, you know, discussing with people and finding out the rationale of why people do different things, one can learn a lot. Like, for example, you know, there are people who've made comments about hijab, but in the areas where this has been used, it may have been to protect from dust.
Yeah,
Or,
sun.
you know, or it might be that, you know, when you hear the explanation of different things, then you can understand better, you know, why people do the things they do, and it can help overcome prejudice.
Knowledge helps.
Oh, definitely. I think dialogue, you know, and events that promote community cohesion are so important.
Yes. You at the Race Equality Council, how do you work?
We work with many people from different communities. Our board members are from different backgrounds.
B-O-A-R-D.
Yeah.
B-O-R-E-D.
No, our board members are from different communities, so they help to set the policies and strategies of what we're going to work with. Our members come from different communities, and we all work together to try and make sure there's fairness and that people are not, you know, left out. Because we have a strategic way of looking at the needs in the borough. So we would be looking from the helicopter view rather than actually, this is my community, I must get this, you know, my community, I must get that. So everybody's fighting for their own corner. What we do as a Racial Equality Council is to see what is the overall need in the community and that all those needs are being met. So there might be a community that actually has no real voice. They may be new arrivals and they don't actually have an organization or a community that is represented in where there's power. So there's there could be lack of councillors there, or it could be forums where you go and talk about what your needs are, and nobody's talking to that community that's left out. So they're not hard to find, these people. Often they talk about hard to reach communities. They're not hard to reach if you actually make an effort to invite them into your decision making processes, if you make an effort to go out and see what it is that they need. So we try to look at the needs of the whole of the borough, and I said we are there for all of the communities, not just one community. We're not just there for one particular race or one particular aspect of, you know, where you're living in one area. No. We know, it's like some people say, oh, now there are inequalities in one part of the borough, you're only interested in that part of the borough. No, that's not true. We're interested in the whole of the borough, because there might be some very you know, so-called asset-rich but poor cash people living in big houses. So they say, you know, in certain parts of Enfield there are very rich people. Not necessarily. There might be some old pensioners who are living there in a very big house, but actually they're not getting enough money to support themselves even, but they're too proud to go and get the benefits that they need. So we're interested in their needs as much as we're interested in the person who may be in social housing and still not getting their needs. So it's like looking at different individuals as well as communities and making sure everybody's getting their fair share. So that is what we look at.
I think Chandra raised a very important point there, because the board and the body, the REC, is also picking up if there are any community tensions.
Right.
They can filter this through to other authorities, you know, so that, you know, action can be taken in a timely but discreet way. And this is the marvelous work that Chandra and the people who work there do. However, I've got to say here, and it's a plea really to our different communities, and particularly the Asian community, which is now a lot wealthier than it was in years gone by, that, you know, because of austerity, a lot of the funds that were being given to organizations dealing with race and issues of this sort have been cut. And the consequences, very unfortunate, particularly given the events that we are having now, you know, because you need organizations like the REC to be funded. And it would be so helpful, you know, if there were charitable funds going from, for example, some of the wealthier Asian organizations to organizations like this, because, you know, the local authorities now are very impoverished. They're not in the same financial situation that they were. Since 2008, austerity has gutted a lot of local authorities. So, you know, hopefully our wealthier Asian groups can think about helping organizations such as the REC. There is also the other question that Chandra has raised. The racial equality is for everybody. You know, there are people who are from, you know, the indigenous community now, who are in a much
I like that term. Indigenous.
who are in more difficult, challenged situations. I mean, we're hearing that, I was looking at the figures, now 66% of families with children, because of austerity, so that includes all races, all groups, are finding it difficult, you know, to pay their debts. You know, it's having a major posing a major problem for a lot of families. Are very economically challenged, and, you know, we all have our part to play as the different communities here. You know, if we have wealthier communities to participate. And I was very pleased during COVID, speaking here as Asians, how many Asian people were involved, for example, in voluntary work. Loads of the organizations stepped up and were helping, you know, each other, helping older people in the community from all communities. Was very glad to see that there was that effort made, you know, because we all belong here. You know, you were asking us about nationality, what we think about whether being British is a ethnicity. Well, we are British, you know, and we want to make the best for to keep this lovely country going.
For all practical purposes, if we want to have the advantage, we should also share responsibility.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You're right, Yasmin. This cleanliness you were mentioning, and then different people have different standards, you see. But some people, you must realize in your own life, that some people are a bit too over the top, see. And they would consider others, if they don't come up to their level, they would consider that they're not clean enough, you see. And that is where the problem starts, you see. That if I consider somebody not clean enough, even if I take 2 baths a day and change my undergarments and my shirts every day, somebody might feel that I still smell. And so that starts the problem
I think it's got nothing to do with cleanliness, I'm afraid. I think it's got all about stereotyping about, you know, different races and different people. And people pick on things to actually just find differences and actually say that, you know, X person is not clean, when in fact, you know, they have known nothing about that person at all, and they're probably more hygienic than they even themselves, because, you know, like in certain cultures, for example, you know, like my family, my grandmother and my mother would not even get out of, you know, like you know, into the kitchen until they've actually had a shower. They will not cook food until then. They will actually, you know, not touch their religious books until they've actually had a shower. So I think that, and also there's a lot of people who say somebody smells is actually talking like you could smell of curry, when in fact they're going to go and have a curry themselves that evening. So I think it's all about prejudice, it's all about racism, it's all about stereotyping. It's got nothing to do with your own standards of cleanliness, actually, to tell you the truth. It's got nothing to do with the individual is cleaning. It's nothing to do with it. Whilst cleanliness and hygiene are two different things, and I think that some people say cleanliness is next to godliness, is what they say in the Christian faith, but actually all faiths say the same thing in a way. That you cannot actually, it's like in Islam, you can't pray until you've done certain things. So it's like, it seems to me that there are actually absolutely same standards that are available in every community, and if anybody's using the word cleanliness as an excuse to be nasty to somebody else, it's because they're not doing it from any rational place. They're doing it because they're prejudiced, or because they're actually just finding an excuse to be horrible to somebody. And often children say that to each other. And I think there is a lot of cases where harassment takes place in the classes or in the schools, and they're racist to each other or nasty to whatever's going on outside. They bring it into the school and they're being horrible to each other about it.
You're absolutely right, Chandra. And in fact, the figures are quite alarming for when we're talking about the increase in racism. What they have found, in fact, is that while I mean, these are official figures that from the hate crime, that while racism is not so much the issue of ethnicity and religion, there's been a 25% increase in crimes related to those, and particularly with young children, 60,000 cases is being quoted now of.
Over a period of 12 months?
Over a period of the last 3 years by the Neighborhood Watch. And this is a figure from March 2024 in schools. And, that's a huge figure. And, talking to Chandra, you might want to elaborate on what's happened with the different structures of schools, which has meant that reporting there is terrible underreporting, 52% underreporting. And, these are precisely the sort of subjects that children pick on.
Well, I think it's whatever's going on outside and in the home is brought into the school. And I think that if they will display attitudes that are at home sometimes, and sometimes of course the parents are not responsible for that, and they'll be horrified when the child is reported to saying X, Y and Z to their friend or classmate. But I think sometimes it is reflecting what is going on outside. They bring that into the school and abusive or whatever. Sometimes you find the children who bully anyway are the kind of children who would bully others and be racially abusive at the same time. But I think what the underreporting is, one of the reasons is because there was certainly a lot of push by local authority to talk about what is harassment, and reports from the school were kept and then reported to the council. But now, because there's so many different ways of identifying schools, academies or private schools and others, and they don't report in the same way, or they're not required to report in the same way. It's particularly academies are not under control, say, of the local authority. So we don't always know exactly what is going on. But it's important that the schools have proper policies and procedures for when there is something going on, that they immediately can tackle it and stop it from becoming a bigger problem.
But who monitors academies?
I don't quite know exactly who, but it's not the councils. I think it must be the government inspectorate. I don't know whether it's Ofsted or not, but whether they actually go in for that, and I don't know the exact procedures.
I think it's very important, again, what Chandra raises about, the reporting mechanisms. And, schools have governing bodies, including the academies. And through you, the families who are listening to us today, hopefully, they can ask the question of their governing bodies, how is racism reported? And is there any way, we can see some statistics or monitor this? Because there's an increasing number of academies, of course, in the school governing landscape, and that is, some people go for that, but the thing is that racism is a very, very real issue. But having said all of this, one thing that we can take some pride in is certainly the fact that many of the pupils from the ethnic backgrounds are doing much better in the results than they were in the past. This is something to celebrate.
I have a question here. Why racial inequality is considered a problem?
Well, that's an incredible question.
I think inequality, in a way, we're not all, as we said, not everybody's equal, but we are different at times. And I think we need to actually acknowledge how our difference is getting treated. So if you're actually held back by the difference, where somebody's perceiving that particular difference in a way that's in a way that's actually going to disadvantage you, if they're going to hold you back as a result and discriminate against you, then yes, it matters, because inequality then needs to be addressed. But none of us are saying that everybody's the same. We're not saying that we all need the same things, because sometimes you may have to address each person's needs in a different way. So it wouldn't be equal in that way. But inequality means, when we're talking about it, is when we're saying that somebody is being treated in a bad way because of, in a less favorable way because of their differences.
Right. Would you answer this question?
Well, I totally agree with Chandra that not everybody is the same, but it's their treatment that you have to address. That has to be treated equally, and we're talking particularly from the point of view of services. Those of us who have given local authority services or asking for local authority services would expect equal treatment.
Thank you. We are at the end of our program. I have one last question and one word answer. Will racism ever end?
I hope so.
Chandra.
Same as Yasmin. I mean, I think that racism is important in being dealt with, because it actually leads to, human beings not contributing fully to the society, and we need everybody's contribution to progress.
Right. And what is a person who is not a racist? What would you call him? The handle.
Well, if race is color, then color blind, we would hope.
I don't think that's very good to be colorblind, because I think you need to acknowledge what somebody else is as a human being, and if they have certain characteristics,
well, they have
to
say it. They have to say it rather than we.
Yeah, but
I think have to admit.
And admit is also a loaded word. It's a difficult concept, really.
Yeah.
But equal treatment is at the root of all of it.
Yeah, it's that we all should be treated with respect and dignity that we all deserve.
Absolutely.
And then we owe it to each other and to the society, because society cannot flourish.
Thank you, Chandra, and thank you, Yasmin, for coming along and sharing your very, very pertinent opinions and knowledge about racism. And thank you, viewers, for being with us, and we hope that you've enjoyed the show as much as we have. See you again.